commitment, deep end, requirement, is on the decline. And that's a good thing. And I don't know what the causes for it is. Maybe it's a holdover from the JDI and the harms of detention on the front end are trickling down to the back end of the system. Or maybe it's lower crime rates, or maybe it's realization, or maybe it's better defense time. There are many reasons. We don't know why, but it is declining. But the thing to note is, it's still higher than what it was. It hasn't declined, it's still all in. Now let's look at South Dakota's committed youth in residential placement by the appendix type. Only 18% of the kids that are committed are being committed to crimes of violent crimes. Everyone else who's being committed is being committed for what are categorically called non-violent crimes. Not the highest danger. And 12%, that's kids that are charged with less than this. And for detained on the front end, the numbers are a little different. But it's only 13% of those kids are charged with crimes against them. So if you're in, as they were talking about the JDI situation, the issue for detention is the child in danger? Is yourself agreeing or risk of flight? Are these statistics really bearing that out? 47% of kids in pretrial detention for violation, whether it's a technical violation of a police order or some violating some court order prior to trial. Now, those kids really think they should be in the community. We need to start advocating, I think, along lines of adolescent development. These are normal adolescent behaviors. Let's not expect absolute compliance, let's expect substantial compliance. And let's work with each other to get to substantial or from substantial to absolute. And we talked earlier about race a little bit, so I think it's important to look back. Defenders need to know about this. They need to know about disproportionate minority crime, how it affects juvenile justice. And for committed youth, white kids and Native American kids are evenly committed, 47% of the population. But that's not your population in South Dakota. It doesn't reflect what's going on here. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 75% of South Dakota's youth are white. And only 13% of South Dakota's youth are Native American. Yet they're evenly oppressed. What does that say about our alternatives? Are they culturally sensitive? Do our courts understand the cultural needs of the Native American population? These are things that we as defenders can have. And in detention, the numbers are slightly better, but they're still very good. So let's talk briefly, in the little time we have left, some of those consequences, and what the consequences for adjudication are in South Dakota. I can't go through all the consequences there are dozens. Let's talk about some of the important ones that we should be familiar with. Within 10 days under your law, after disposition, the court shall, it's a mandatory, it's not an option, the court shall give notice to the chief administrator of the schools in which you do the report. The child's adjudicated for anything. Your courts are supposed to be telling your school. Think about the state. Think about what that means. So if a kid's going to plead guilty to this, let's have that conversation. Well, you also have to know this isn't going to be private. Your school's going to be. And does that change how you do your calculus and what you want to do? And that notification includes a description of the offense, what the disposition was, and it may include the description of the act that constitutes and the details within the statute. I encourage you to familiarize yourself with it is a conversation you should be having. And school adjudications have limits on college or financial aid. If you're adjudicated as delinquent for a drug offense, it's impossible to get federal financial aid to go to college. Housing. Well, federal law provides that a leasee or participant in any Section 8 subsidy program can be severed for the benefit of the public. If a juvenile household member engages in criminal activity, if it is adjudicated delinquent, the entire family could be kicked out of that account. How does that affect? Not just you're not the family's lawyer, but you're the client's lawyer, and your kid can come home. I mean, think about what your family's in Section 8 housing. Higher education. South Dakota Board of Regents says that undergraduate reporting juvenile adjudications is not required in the state university system when you're looking for housing. They're not going to ask you to give that up. If they find out about it, it will keep you out of the line. I mean, out of the university. And so if your kid is interested in, or one of those kids that don't practice or college, just think about it. If your kid's a sports administrators can request marijuana education for juveniles. They can just flat out request it and work with you over. And they may be barred from participating in sport because of a education. And law schools, it's one of those kids that could eventually go to law school. Adjudications are required to be reported in their law school. Character fitness for the law. Other consequences: employment checks, background checks. Corporations all over the country, Target and Walmart, are doing background checks. They do the juvenile background check. They can find an adjudication for any, God forbid, that this child's never going to be correct. No matter how long, there are some credit bureaus that are getting juvenile adjudications that could affect the kid's credit score. Rental application fee. So even when you're an adult, you could be going into a lease an apartment, and they find out you're going to pick out a Section 8 housing because you better you were to become delinquent. Well, you don't care how much you have. You can't pay. Sex offender registration. What are the requirements for sex offender registration for juvenile? And am I advising my client about that? Anytime there's a detention. Bargain for military service. And it can restrict driving, your ability to get a driver's license. Kids that are getting in trouble for joyriding before they have a license, that statute there has a whole lot of restrictions on when they'll ever get a license. So there's some current trends around the country about what we need to be doing with juvenile business. And the Attorney General of the United States has a task force on kids exposed to violence. And the current administrator of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention is actually the author of this report. And he acknowledged that defenders, the federal government acknowledges that defenders are instrumental in protecting the prosecutors of the juvenile justice system. And that when we're getting pushback, we're being asked to be part of the team and not an advocate. These are things that we want to. Department of Justice is also going out and starting to sue counties. There's been investigations in Shelby County, Tennessee, Lauderdale County, Mississippi. There's an ongoing investigation right now in St. Louis County, Missouri. The Department of Justice, a special litigation division of civil rights, is going into these systems and either suing them in the case of Mississippi because they're refusing to change their practices, or forcing consent decrees in places like Tennessee, where they are revamping the justice system because they're finding that disproportionate minority contact is that due process is not being honored. And so this is something that the federal government is actively looking at. These three have come out last year. They're rumored to be many, many more. The other thing is, we talked about JDI earlier. JDI is a framework system. It's detention. But AAPC is also expanding their role, what they've learned from detention. They're going to start putting it into the system. And so they're starting out some deep end work. In fact, South Dakota is not one of them yet. But beyond the one, see what we can learn from the advances in JDI and how we can push those deep ends. These are trends that we look at. These are time about facilities. The thing I think I want to leave you with is I've given you a lot of information, really surface, really narrow. And so hopefully you're saying, give me more. Think about how do I get better. We want you to let you know this. As Angel said, National Juvenile Defender Center, our mission is to promote justice for all children by ensuring excellence in prison. You are our constituents. You are the people that we serve. Our job is to provide you technical assistance, training, technical assistance on an individual basis or training on a mass basis, to make you better defenders, to give you the skill sets that you need and that you identify as needed to make your representation better. Angel is going to soon be a certified JTIP trainer. JTIP is Juvenile Training and Immersion Program. It is a 40-lesson curriculum that we put out that creates a specialty in juvenile defense. And talk about all these things. There's a lesson on adolescent development. There's a lesson on juvenile conflict. There's a lesson on special education concerns for juvenile conflict. There's a lesson on immigration. And then there's trial skills all throughout. How do you process your child evidence? How do you interview kids? All these things are encompassed. Soon, we're going to have someone who knows how to do these things, who knows how to deliver these things. But it's not just Angel. We have, by the end of the summer, we're going to have 100 certified JTIP trainers around the country. Many of them, they can all one. As Angel said, you're part of the Midwest Group of Defenders, which is the yellow. The co-directors are based out of the Office of Public Defender, State Public Defender in Wisconsin, and the Juvenile Justice Institute in Chicago. And they are happy to provide just as much technical assistance training as we are at the national. And Angel does not get up there. He's even up whoever needs this kind of assistance. I talked about the JTIP program, and this is kind of just a sense. These are the chapters, these aren't the lessons, but these are the whole host of things that we may how is the Fourth Amendment motions practice about how is the Fourth Amendment relevant to kids? How do we use these adolescent development things on things like consent and freedom of speech? How does it affect Fifth Amendment orientations? How does it affect identification? All these things and how is it applied? The other thing we do is we do state assessments of court systems around. And the yellow is the things we've done so far. It's the assessment of access to quality of juvenile representation. And what we do is we go into states and we watch court hearings all across the state, defenders all across the state, prosecutors, probation officers, judges, anyone who has a stake in juvenile justice. And we ask a whole bunch of questions about what's it like. How are kids being served about defenders? Are defenders given the tools they need to do these things? What are your thoughts? And these reports come out, and we give recommendations to every group of stakeholders how they can improve the process for kids in state. And often, those kinds of assessments really make some fundamental changes. Assessment in Colorado last year, and you don't have to. All this summer, the Colorado legislature debated packages on how to reform the detention practice to ensure that every kid in Colorado has a lawyer in detention. Prior to that, 50% of kids in Colorado didn't have lawyers in detention. We're very expensive. And we're fixing the legislature. So these are things that we can do, whether we do an assessment in South Dakota in the near future or not. You can learn from our assessments. It's all available on our website. You can also ask us how these kinds of reform movements are happening in other states and what we might be able to do here in South Dakota. And here's some contact information that I'll leave up. Also need to have. But thank you for your time. I know it's been an early morning, and I appreciate your time. So why don't we take a